Welcome to the Classical Gabfest, a weekly discussion about the ever-changing world of classical music. I'm your host for this week, William White, and with me as always are Tiffany Liu and Kensho Watanabe. This week we'll be discussing the Philadelphia Chamber Music Society's great success in presenting online concerts. Then, what we've all been waiting for, we'll talk about the Build Your Own Hurdy Gurdy kit. And finally, we'll have an interview with Meg Singer, a member of the Navajo Nation, about her experience producing a revival of the first native opera, the Sundance Opera by ZITKALA-SA. But first, we like to start with our prelude segment. So, Tiffany, what do we have today?
This week, we'll be playing a round of everyone's favorite game, Viola Hero! In the world of classical music, the viola is often overlooked and maligned, the red-headed stepchild of the string section. With this game, we seek to bring awareness to the irreplaceable value of the viola in well-known orchestral works. Here's how we will play. I will name a category of symphonic repertoire, and then play for you a few bars of just the viola part from a famous work. I have my trusty viola with me, and my co-hosts, along with all of you at home, will try to identify the piece after hearing the excerpt. This week, there will be 3 categories. Are you guys ready to play?
Can't wait. It's the first time playing.
Yep. Well, I got a viola, so that opens the playing field up for Kensho here. Okay. Our first category today is 20th century non-symphonic orchestral works. You guys ready?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think this should be...
Either you know it or you don't.
Either
so
you know
let's
it or you
just...
don't.
I would say that about describes this one. All right, here we go.
Oh, boy.
I have no idea.
Kensho, did that give you like a neo-Baroque feel?
Yeah, in some ways, yes. Yeah. I was thinking like maybe something, it's quite like pompous and, I don't know, not a march, but it was kind of blocky, right?
Yeah, I was thinking like, this could be something where a 20th century composer was referring back to some older music. So, people who did that were like who? A lot of Russians did that. Stravinsky. Prokofiev sometimes. Hindemith maybe.
But this is a non-symphonic work, right? So we have to think about non-symphonic works.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I guess it could be, a ballet score? A suite?
Yeah. But this doesn't, I mean, you said Stravinsky, but
yeah, I said Stravinsky just because he's somebody who
right.
did some neoclassical stuff.
Who else did stuff like that? Respighi,
yeah.
Like those ancient airs and dances.
Yeah.
But I don't know those at all.
I know them pretty well, and I don't think that this is one of them.
Okay. What else could it be? Could it be like British?
Could be, yeah.
That was the other direction I went in when I was listening to it. I was like, oh, maybe this is a British work.
Yeah, maybe Elgar, something like that. When you said pompous, that's...
Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Pomp himself.
I don't know if I can narrow it down further than that, honestly.
Yeah. I would go Elgar.
Elgar. Should we name a non-symphonic work by Elgar?
Sure. Cocaine.
You just had that in the chamber for these 28 sessions. Finally got to say that for this?
Yep.
Is the Elgar's Cocaine Overture. But, okay, you guys are everything you heard was so spot on. Here's what it is.
Oh, of course.
Britain, Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra.
That's right.
The variation on a theme by Henry Purcell, right?
That's right.
We should have had that.
We were totally circling the bullseye.
I would never pick a piece that I didn't feel like you guys probably knew really well for this game. particular game.
No, that was totally.
Yeah.
I thought you guys would get it by
Over
the
the-
second bar, where we have
Bum 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 ba jump bum bum, just like that like metric structure with the rhythm. I thought that was where. So I've miscalibrated this game.
No, that was over the plate. That was like
it
that
wasn't
was,
a
that
gimme,
was,
but I think we could have reasoned it out.
Well, Benjamin Britten was a viola player and a
Yeah, it's
viola
true.
lover. My main association with that piece is honestly a Wes Anderson film, the one where they do Noah's Flood, and they have a lot of that in there. What is that one called? They're like at the camping site.
Oh yeah, Moonrise Kingdom.
Moonrise Kingdom. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Well,
All right.
Good analysis, I will say. Definitely, like, you were absolutely right over the right answer. Okay, here's the next one. The category is romantic concertos.
Oh, got it.
Sibelius Violin Concerto?
Nope.
Don't tell me then. I want to see if I can figure it out.
I got
Oh,
it.
Rachmaninoff?
Nope.
Uh,
Come on.
give me an instrument.
Of the what?
Tell me what the solo instrument is.
Cello.
Oh, the Dvorak Cello Concerto.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yep, it's the very, very end there. Third excerpt. The category is overtures.
Sounded to me like Beethoven or Mozart, just in terms of the rhythms, the harmonies, the voice leading.
Yeah, and it's all like sounds like an introduction to
Yes, to a main section. Yeah. At first, I thought that it was Don Giovanni, bum 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 bum. You know what I'm talking about, right? In that overture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then boom bum ba dee dee da dee dee dee. Yeah, what she was playing.
Yeah, it's Don Giovanni.
Yeah, Don Giovanni.
Good. All right, you got
All
it.
right.
Good call, Willies.
Teamwork.
All right. Good game, guys.
This is fun. It's fun playing just as much as it is creating the
Yeah,
exercise.
I enjoy this game
This
quite
is
a
a good
lot,
game.
actually. That just about does it for this week's Prelude segment. But before we wrap up, we'd like to mention a special opportunity for our listeners. If you mention your love for the GabFest on social media or in an email to your classically inclined friends, tag or CC us, and you'll be entered for a chance to come on the show and participate in one of our Prelude games. It's a win-win. You get the fun of a musical listening challenge, and more people get to enjoy our wonderful show. And with that, we move on to our first topic. Kensho, what do you have for us?
We at the GabFest continue to stay apprised of COVID performance success stories from around the world. And this week, we'd like to highlight a success story that's occurring just a few blocks from where I live at the Philadelphia Chamber Music Society, or PCMS, as the locals like to say. PCMS, much like most other performing arts organizations, quickly pivoted to presenting concerts digitally during the pandemic. However, they have been able to produce surprising numbers on their viewership. After 13 events so far, the viewership of the programs averaged 3,200 per concert. Now, I think this is 3,200 households, I'm assuming. Doesn't specify. While the majority of the viewers come from the surrounding Philadelphia and New Jersey area, roughly 20% of their audiences come from outside the US, including Canada, Mexico, the UK, Germany, India, Israel, and Japan. This wonderful success can be attributed to PCMS's pay-as-you-wish donation model, in which these concerts are technically free to attend digitally with a virtual donation basket. With this model, PCMS has been able to draw in $7,500 in donations per concert, which is roughly equal to the paid ticket revenue of a pre-pandemic event. So, guys, what do you guys think about this?
It's fantastic news. And I think that this is a really good paradigm for what organizations should be doing in a lot of ways. For one thing, they continue to present excellent quality musicians and really good quality live streams. So the content that they're producing is phenomenal. And the pay as you can model is also really perfect. It's exactly what we need in this time, where people are starved for culture and for new content. But for some people, this is a very challenging time financially. And for others, this has been a big windfall. So, why not have those people who are feeling charitable and able to give, subsidize the experience for other people, no matter where they are in the world? I just think that this is great.
Yeah, it's obviously excellent news for Philadelphia. And I think that there's a lot to be said for having faith in your audience to implement a pay-as-you-go or a pay-as-you-wish kind of model. I mean, really kind of counting on your listeners to really value what they listen to enough to put forth money for it instead of just grabbing for it for free. And then also acknowledging that some people are simply not in a position to pay anything, really. I guess the question is, I mean, obviously they were able to, Philadelphia Chamber Music Society has been able to draw and put on top tier talent. And this is not going to be possible for a lot of arts organizations out there. So I would say it's, highly doubtful that middle of Tennessee, where I live, we're going to have an orchestra that's able to draw a multinational audience. And so while obviously the successes of what they're doing are really laudable, it's not something that we can just say, look at them, look at what they're doing, we ought to do that too. Although obviously there are lessons to be learned from what they have succeeded in.
That's a great point, Tiffany, because the quality of talent that is performing on these digital stages is quite impressive. And pre-pandemic too, I mean, PCMS is a highly, highly regarded series, not just in Philly, but also in probably New York, kind of comparable, I would say, to chamber music at Lincoln Center in terms of just the quality that you're able to provide. One thing that's really interesting to me is we've talked a lot about kind of orchestras or like these kind of bigger performing arts organizations that have somewhat more of an outward-facing kind of public relations front, where they're not only servicing the surrounding community, but also going on tour or releasing recordings and stuff like that. And the Chamber Music Society is very much serving just the people in the local community, right? It's a little bit more of an intimate setting. And, from my experience in going to PCMS concerts, they've done a really great job of welcoming audiences. So there's always someone there to come and welcome the audience before the event starts. And there's a good vibe just in terms of the hall when they perform. And so this is also, I think, reflected in that people are very loyal to PCMS just from the local standpoint. And, of course, when you're offering things digitally, then you bring in the international audience. So I don't know how impressive the 20% is in terms of 20% of the audience coming from international things. But
I guess what we want to know is what percentage of the donations are coming from international audiences. I guess that's what we really want to know to see how important that is, because it's awesome, that you have something that has this kind of local grassroots ethic about it, small scale local musicians. And of course, they're lucky enough to have like the best local musicians it is possible to have with Philadelphia Orchestra and Curtis there. But let's put that aside for a second, local grassroots vibe, and yet have this amazing slice of the pie be from overseas. And of course, people that you wouldn't be able to reach if you weren't doing programming like this. So that might be a lesson in and of itself, regardless of how much revenue it generates.
One thing that I think is, we've talked about a lot about the great things, but I thought it was a little bit alarming that the average viewing time for these concerts is only 18 minutes. I mean, I'm assuming that these programs are an hour long or an hour and a half long or something like this. Usually these kind of online sessions, kind of limit themselves to about 90 minutes. So of the 90 minutes, the average viewing time is only 20 minutes. So, I mean, how intently or how closely are people watching these events? And I guess that's perhaps a drawback to making something free to attend, is that there's no skin in the game for these people that just sign up to watch these concerts, right? And then it's kind of like, oh, I just put it in the background while I cook, or, oh, I got a call, I'm just going to, stop watching this and, take my call or whatever.
Yeah, but who cares? I mean, why is that like a detriment? That's 18 minutes more of watching beautiful chamber music than somebody would have done otherwise. So, it's fine. I mean, just back to the audience demographics thing about international versus local viewers. I find that really interesting, that it just points out that classical music does still pull people into a local feeling, because in a way, for something free like this with big famous classical stars, you would almost expect it to be that you would see equal numbers of viewers from all over the world, but it's mainly serving Philadelphians, and that's because they feel connected to this organization. It's just an interesting reflection on the fact that you would think that in this time, why not just have everybody sign up for the Berlin Philharmonic Digital Concert Hall and have that be like the classical music feed for the world? Well, it's because people actually feel connected to their local institutions, and they might know the people on stage. They've seen these people for years. The programming might, to some tiny extent, have a reflection of the local taste. I mean, I think the taste tends to be pretty international in classical music, but I think it's a good thing overall that these many flowers can bloom in the pandemic. Because I was kind of worried that, everybody would just sign up for the Berlin, and that's considered by so many people the best orchestra in the world. So if I'm just watching an orchestra on the screen, why bother checking out my own symphony orchestra in my own town?
Well, I think that the response to both Kensho's comment about viewership time and this comment about local viewership can be traced to the same kind of root, which is that when you live in a community, you want to actually live there, even though we're kind of distance at this time, like you're still going to the grocery store that's down the street. Like there are many ways in which we cannot transcend our corporeal bounds. And so, you want to be affiliated with the institutions, even the cultural ones, even the ones that are doing all digital stuff. But then there's also some more practical concerns like the time difference. I mean, I'm not tuning in at 1 p.m. to watch an 8 p.m. concert in Berlin. Sorry, I have other things to be doing because that's the shape of my day. But also note that the marketing in those organizations that, broadcast these links is going to be very heavily directed towards the local area anyway. Mm-hmm. So, there's a sense in which, okay, yeah, we want to reach a broader audience, but also we want to show that we're devoted to our own communities. And the reason that I feel like this ties into Kensho's comment about viewership times, I'd be interested to know if there's a correlation, negative or positive, between international or distance from Philadelphia and viewing time, because I would venture to say that the more distance that you are from the Philadelphia, the less invested you are going to be in watching the entire concert. I'm going to guess that a good chunk of the people who ended up watching the entire show are from Philadelphia or diehard musicians or family and friends of people in the Philadelphia circle, and that a lot of the people who tuned in from overseas just to see what was up there, the same way that I would tune into something in Europe probably, are going to be the same ones that are doing it while cooking or what have you. The question is, do the people who end up viewing it for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, what have you, does that convert into being in touch culturally at all for the people who are doing that? And I think that is, I mean, Will, you were sort of a little bit anything is good and we can, whatever we can get. But I do think that it's a shame that these days we can't focus on anything for more than a couple minutes. And that, I think, is a major issue for our form of music in very particular. I mean, every other genre lends itself a little bit more to the 3-minute attention span. And we cannot do this. We can shake it up in so many other ways. I'm willing to really, break and bend a lot of rules. But the issue of patience with the listener is one that I think we are going to really need to confront hard in the coming years.
Sorry, what'd you say? I wasn't paying attention.
He's such a dick.
Kidding.
But let's see. I mean, I'm looking at the PCMS site.
Yeah, it is stacked. Just looking at the upcoming schedule, which ones would you guys tune in for? Are there any concerts of note here? Because there's a lot that I think look amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Takash Quartet.
Mozart, Dutilleux, and Brahms. That's interesting.
And Susan Graham and Bradley Moore. That should be a fun program. The Izuris I know from my Curtis days. They were in residence. So yeah, it's like, as a Philadelphia native, this is kind of like seeing a lot of the names that I've seen in Philly quite often, even if they don't currently reside in Philly. I think they're probably close or affiliated in some way. So,
and we got to mention one of the most recent streams from this series, my boy Alexi Kinney, who's just like swoon baby. Oh my gosh, I recommended him on a mixtape before. He does some of his own videos that he puts on his YouTube channel, but a whole evening with Alexi, that sounds pretty good.
I don't think I have anything to say. I'm sorry.
I can't say anything after that.
Yeah. Listeners will link this in the show notes, but the whole concert calendar is available at pcmsconcerts.org.
Great. Well, let's check out some of these concerts, and congrats to PCMS. Looks like they're doing very well. All right, Willies, what's next?
All right, GabFest listeners, it's time for the moment you didn't know you'd been waiting for. We are devoting an entire segment to the Make Your Own Hurdy Gurdy kit. Yes, this storied bit of paraphernalia has been a subject of discussion on our show for several months now. First, because it had been advertised to me so vociferously on my Instagram feed. Then, because of a mixtape recommendation from Kensho, Schubert's Der Leiermann, aka the Hurdy Gurdy player. And finally, because of a listener email that referenced said recommendation. Before we get to the topic of building a hurdy-gurdy of one's own, let's briefly discuss what this instrument actually is. According to Wikipedia, the font of all human knowledge, the hurdy-gurdy is a stringed instrument that produces sound by a hand-crank-turned, rosined wheel rubbing against the strings. The wheel functions much like a violin bow, and single notes played on the instrument sound similar to those of a violin. Melodies are played on a keyboard that presses tangents, or tangents, small wedges, typically made of wood, against one or more of the strings to change their pitch. Okay, before we go any further, let's hear what it actually sounds like. To be clear, that was quite a handsome, full-sized hurdy-gurdy instrument. That was not the make-your-own hurdy-gurdy kit instrument. But why would anyone want to make their own hurdy-gurdy? Why would hurdy-gurdy kit makers advertise so boldly? And what do people on the internet think of all of this? Well, to start answering those questions, I'm now going to turn this segment over to my co-host Tiffany Liu, who has bought her own Make Your Own Hurdy-Gurdy kit. So Tiffany, we did a little unboxing video yesterday, which is going to turn up on our Instagram feed, I'm sure, at some point. But tell us about what was in the box. What do you make of this? Have you started to put the hurdy-gurdy together? And just tell us everything about this.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the fact that I bought the thing, I think probably answers your first two questions as to why anyone would want to make their own, and also why would they advertise so boldly, because like, obviously
better question,
worked,
why
right?
are we giving them so much free advertising when it's clear that they have a budget that they are willing to spend to get on my Instagram feed?
I think this, I mean, if we were ever to get a sponsor for this show,
yes,
it has to be.
We need to be reaching out to these people. This is actually, we're leaving money on the floor.
We're really bad at advertising. We don't even know the brand of this hurdy-gurdy kit. But Will, so when I was just listening to, so is there always a drone with the hurdy-gurdy? So there's a drone, and then
it's a heavily drone-based instrument, and there are like sympathetic strings and stuff. I mean, it's quite a concoction, this thing, you know.
Yeah, but then at the end of that excerpt, I was hearing like rhythms too, like a bop going on.
So that's done, I believe, with the keys, and I think that you can sort of half press the keys to kind of make those little drone rhythms and stuff. And you know what's interesting about the hurdy-gurdy too is that it's a lap-sized instrument. I mean, it's sort of like a combination between a cello and an auto harp, if you've ever seen one of those. But apparently, originally these instruments were twice as long. They were like as long as a cello. They were played by two people. And they were used in churches before the invention of the pipe organ as like choral accompaniment or accompanying the chants or the psalm singing or something like that. It helped keep the singers in tune. And so I think that drone was a big part of that.
Yeah, and it's definitely not the only kind of folk instrument to have. I mean, I was thinking about bagpipes the entire time. It's like, would I rather listen to an hour of this or an hour of bagpipes?
Oh,
but,
this, hands down.
Yeah, this hands down.
Hurdy-gurdy, hands down.
String instrument, at least.
Let's get that sponsorship.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, UGEARS, get at us. But...
Oh man, this is great. I'm tagging them up and down.
We have no shame. We're just
what
like
we ought to know, though,
ourselves.
I mean, like, as you can tell from the name of this company, this is obviously a mechanical model making company and not a hurdy-gurdy making company, right? It's not like some musicians who decided to make your own hurdy-gurdy kit. It's a model making company that decided to make a hurdy-gurdy.
Right. It's sort of like, I mean, it struck me as halfway between a build your own ship in a bottle and like Connects or Lego or something.
Yeah, as I mentioned when I unboxed this, like I wasn't the kind of kid who built toy boats, but this I would have been into, and frankly am into. Like, yes, I have started, and it's fun. Like, although I will say, like, I'm not optimistic about the like instrumental viability of the finished product. I'll let you guys know when I finish.
Well, okay, guess what? I have big news for you guys. I found a video where somebody plays the UGEARS hurdy-gurdy.
Oh,
hell yeah.
Now a bit of modern rock and roll.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
I mean, I think for a toy that you build out of things that you punch out of,
That's
like cardboard.
pretty good.
Oh my gosh, Tiffany!
Wow.
You've made some real progress on that.
Yeah, I mean, like there are, functional gears here made out of, little wooden pieces that I've punched out of a sheet of plywood. And, I mean, mechanically, it all seems to line up. I will say, like, I've had to do quite a lot of fine tuning, like sanding down parts of the pieces that are supposed to fit because they don't quite fit. And like,
don't say that. It's perfect. It's easy to put together.
Well, it is very beautiful.
Very user friendly.
And so that's one part. And here's another very
Wow, it's like a clockwork. It
pretty, looks really
pretty
nice.
Intricate.
Yeah.
And like, I am a craft person. I mean, like, this ad was made for me. Like, that's why they're doing this, because there have to be two people out there who have bought based on the fact that they like music and like crafts, something like this. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
we haven't answered this question, by the way, about what the heck algorithm got Will this ad.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all
'cause he knows
because
me.
I mean, I'm a classical music person. I love early music especially, and I am a Lego kid grown up. I mean, I'm surprised that I didn't buy it. But
I will say, for those of you who
luckily I
are
influenced
like
Tiffany.
interested and want to go out and buy this thing, like, I hope that anyone who does like knows or is a string musician, because the little cake of rosin that they give you,
Oh, that's so
that is
cute.
Very adorable.
I hope that this works.
Whenever you
anyway.
play that world's tiniest violin, you've got
That's
something
exactly
ready.
right.
It'll be well
Oh,
rosined.
yeah. I had like the American Girl doll that played the violin, and that also came with like a pinky nail shaped thing of rosin that I
Wow, and so is
immediately
that one of
lost,
the
of course.
strings?
So
that you
these
have
are the
there?
strings. They look more or less like fishing line. And
Yeah, they're plastic or something, right? Or
yeah, exactly. And I mean, the reason that I'm a little scared of this is because once you break these things, I don't think it's really that fixable, frankly.
Right.
But yeah, let's see what the internet thought of these things.
Yeah, okay, so there are some amazing reviews on Amazon of this product. I wanted to read the top one here. It's titled Addressing the Complaints. It says, I went into this after having read all these reviews, especially the bad ones, which I'll address.
Whoa.
So right off the bat, very defensive pose. I assembled it in about 8 hours. It is time consuming, but you need to take your time and be careful or you'll screw it up. The wood is quite durable, precision laser cut, and a lot of the pieces have extras in case you meat fist it. But don't do that. Great piece of advice.
No
Tiffany?
meat fisting.
If you were thinking about meat fisting it, you shouldn't do that. There's sandpaper for cleaning up the edges. Use it. There's wax for lubricating pieces so they go together easier. Use it. The hammer you make is a great tool. Use it instead of any actual tool. It'll keep you from breaking things. Tiffany, do you have to make a hammer to do this?
Yeah.
This is so like Minecrafty. It's like you make the tools that you use to make the hurdy-gurdy.
The instructions are very clear. Read them carefully and they will do you well. If something isn't going together quite right, read them again. Some things look like other things occasionally. That's sort of a broader philosophical truth, I guess.
Yes.
To address the bad reviews, the instruction book is complete, all steps, both strings. The step for cutting the strings says to cut it in half. String up the 2 strings, trim when done. Do that. The instructions aren't hieroglyphs. They're quite good illustrations of exactly what to do, step by step. It is meant to be difficult. It's not a child's toy.
Whoa.
It is a functional model, not an actual instrument. It can be tuned and played, but it is not going to sound like a real one, which would be thousands of dollars. Realize what you're buying here. You wouldn't buy the model train and be mad when you couldn't ride it to Cleveland.
Why Cleveland?
Overall, I found it fun and challenging, and it looks
I wouldn't imagine
awesome.
taking a train to Cleveland. I'm sorry, I love Cleveland in some ways, I guess, but like, why Cleveland?
That's
Wait,
so
let's
good.
find. Is there a negative review that's like really complainy and?
Well, so that was a 5-star review. Here's a 3-star review. The title of the review is $70, not $1,000. If your string broke, read my review. First off, let's remember this is a $70 version of a normally $1,000 plus item. Gonna start with the bad first, then the good. Cons. 1. String snapped on day 1 of playing it. 2. Does not tell exactly what type of fishing line to get. I replaced it with Trilene Big Game 50-pound .028 DIA, almost 2 times as thick.
Oh my God.
3. Does not explain without the rosin you will get no sound at all. 4. Such a small amount of rosin that you don't want to lose it. Dirt cheap stuff at a music store. 5. No spare strings come on, and you have to figure people are going to break them, and we're paying $70 at least. Send them a spare roll of fishing line. It's $5 to $10 for 275 yards. Here are the pros. 1. Fun to build. Wish I dyed my wood before putting it together. Oh, Tiff, there's a tip for you. 2. Can actually play music. Early splitting notes like some just starting at violin. 3. Lot cheaper to mess with and see if you want to dish out $1,000 for a real hurdy-gurdy. I never expected this one to sound great. I just wanted to see if I enjoy it before spending a small fortune on the real one. That is an interesting reason to buy this product.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Would you buy the toy train to see if you wanted to buy a ticket to get on the train to Cleveland? 4. Looks very beautiful. I think that should have been number 1. So being there are only 4 pros and 5 cons, I couldn't give it 5 stars. The company makes great products, but needs to add a few extra items with this to really make it a 4 to 5 star review. 30 people found this helpful.
So, like, I have to imagine that basically the people who are buying this are musicians who are curious what a hurdy-gurdy is like and doesn't want to buy an actual one, and craft makers who like think that hurdy-gurdies look cool, and are one of the very, very, very many models that this company produces. But which one is this person? Like, at first I thought that they were the latter, but then I realized that they must have been the former, and they're complaining about the rosin and how much it costs at a music store. It's like, okay, it's a model.
But speaking of hurdy-gurdy people, did you guys check out Patty Hurdy?
Patty Gurdy.
Patty Gurdy, who's a like a goth hurdy-gurdy singer, songwriter, hurdy-gurdist.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting like even more intrigued by this instrument to the point where I'm considering buying like the actual instrument to learn how to play it.
You should do it. You know how there's like 5 people that play the Onde Martineau and they just traverse the world performing the Turangalila Symphony?
No, this is not going to be a career move, Will. This is more just like personal interest, fulfillment.
Kensho, I could write you a Hurdy Gurdy concerto, and you could become the specialist who plays it, and that could be a huge career move.
Now we have lost all
Now
of
we're
our
playing with
listeners.
fire.
That's what has happened.
Yeah, it's probably time to wrap this up. All right, listeners.
Okay.
So we will link the Hurdy Gurdy kit in the show notes, of course. And, if you want Tiffany's full review beforehand, send us an email.
Stay posted for my wooden model Hurdy Gurdy debut on the songs that they've linked in the back of the instruction booklet, which include Ode to Joy, Bronley. What is it?
Oh, it's like tabs. They tell you just.
Oh
where to put your
and
fingers.
the numbers and the medieval rock and roll.
Wow.
Oh, medieval rock and roll. Hell yeah.
But that's an interesting little twist to this whole story, which is that the people who are complaining on Amazon that they couldn't play music, I mean, this is advertised as like, you can play this.
Yeah.
The fact that it includes sheet music tabs at the end, that's super
Once
interesting.
you know how it goes, because I've broken many a string in my day. We'll see what happens.
All right, listeners, get your own Hurdy Gurdy kit, start putting it together, and let us know what you think.
And UGEARS, come at us. Let's get the sponsorship.
Tiffany, what is our next topic?
Listeners, if you are a follower of the daily Google Doodle, you may have noticed a name pop up about 3 weeks ago, ZITKALA-SA, a Yankton, Dakota composer and native rights activist who lived from 1876 to 1938. Seeing a musician none of us had ever heard of featured on a national platform was more than enough to send us down the rabbit hole, and this is a story truly worthy of your interest. ZITKALA-SA, also known by her missionary given name Gertrude Simmons Bonin, left her native South Dakota reservation at the age of 8 to attend a boarding school run by missionaries in Indiana. After attending Earlham College, she became a teacher at the Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania, one of the first federally funded boarding schools for American Indian youth, where leaders followed a philosophy most succinctly and brutally articulated as, quote, kill the Indian, save the man, and native hairstyles, customs, and clothing were subsequently banned. After conflicts over these policies, ZITKALA-SA left her teaching job to attend the New England Conservatory of Music and performed at the White House in Washington, D.C. for President William McKinley alongside the Carlisle School Band. Concurrently, she began to publish damning exposés on her boarding school experience, as well as a book of short stories based on the Sioux oral tradition called Old Indian Legends. ZITKALA-SA's story is a compelling blend of her musicianship, rhetorical skills, and activism on behalf of her native people. She lived on a Ute Nation reservation in Utah for 15 years, raising a son, writing music, and working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. As she witnessed the quality of life on Indian reservations decline, she moved to Washington, D.C. in 1916 to dedicate the rest of her life to political activities. Today, we focus on one of ZITKALA-SA's few extant works, the Sundance Opera. Written during her years in Utah in 1913 in collaboration with the white composer William Hanson. Considered the first Native American opera, it was inspired by a sacred ceremony of spiritual healing practiced by many tribes across the Great Plains, which, at the time, was actually outlawed by the U.S. government. During pivotal moments in the opera, its Ute cast members would perform songs and dances from the ceremony, and because of its operatic context, they could get around the government ban to assert the value of their own beliefs without consequence. The opera was staged 15 times across Utah by a mixed native and non-native cast under ZITKALA-SA's direction, and it was really well received. It was received with much acclaim by Utah audiences. But get this, after ZITKALA-SA's death in 1938, Hanson, her co-composer, took the opera for its New York City debut, where it garnered harsh reviews. Furthermore, William Hanson went on to claim the Sundance Opera as his own, omitting ZITKALA-SA's contribution, and then willed the Sundance Opera score to Brigham Young University upon his death. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Meg Singer, a member of the Navajo Nation who produced a revival of the Sundance Opera that toured Utah from 2013 to 2015. Singer is a passionate advocate for Indigenous justice and the rights of Native American and Alaskan Native people, and was the Indigenous Program Manager at the ACLU of Montana. Welcome to the show, Meg.
Thank you.
All right, so after that doozy of a story, let's start with you. How did you come to discover ZITKALA-SA's work and get involved in this production?
Yeah, so I come from a musical family. My last name is Singer. My grandfather was a medicine man, and he was very well renowned as a singer who would sing to his patients and help them. Wow. So when it came time for us to get an Anglo name, it went from Little Singer to Singer. So my siblings and I sing. We were kind of like my mom's rendition of the Von Trapp family singers. We were the Singer family singers. And we would sing 4-part harmony anywhere we'd go. And we would sing for church functions, for family functions. It was my younger sister who decided to take singing to the next level. So when she was going to college, she was doing vocal performance at a college in Utah called Weber State University. And at the same time, I was going to college and looking at storytelling, English, Native American history, literature. My sister and I were talking one day, and we were talking about how opera is really, really white. There's white singers, when you think about opera singers, you think about, back in the day in Europe with the big wigs and everything. And we were just kind of like, I wonder if there were any Native American opera singers. She's going into opera. So she was like, am I, paving the way? What's going on here? So we just Googled, and ZITKALA-SA came up, the Sundance Opera. Wow. And I was reading it, and I was like, hey, this lady, wait a second. A semester before, I had taken a class that was about, it was like modern literature. And my professor had brought in ZITKALA-SA's work. And we had read one of her stories called The Soft-Hearted Sioux. And I remember having a huge impact on me, because it's about the story about a Native person who is taken away from their community, is coming back, and then looks around and sees the destruction of the reservation and reservation life, seeing the people being super powerless and not being able to do anything about it. And I just totally connected with that, because I was like, that's me. I'm wondering what the heck happened to my people that got us into this situation. This makes so much sense to me. So I really, just was like, whoa, this is really cool. So I contacted my professor, and I was like, hey, my sister and I, we were just talking about, opera, and that one lady that you showed us, she did an opera in Utah. This is so crazy. And my professor was like, yeah, like I actually did my PhD on that opera. So I was like, well, shoot, let's talk about this. So
who was the professor? Can I ask?
Yeah, her name is Katie Evans. She's amazing. White lady, went to Dartmouth, but she was just like my first and only teacher that actually cared,
Really? Wow.
Was like really focusing on my interests. So anyways, so we were talking about, my sister was there. We were talking about how this opera came to be. And I was like, I want to hear it. Like, this sounds so interesting. Like, what did it sound like? My sister and I got a grant so that we could go down to BYU and look through all of the, the interesting things about the music, about her letters, learning about William Hanson. We found the score. My sister looked at it and she was like, this is interesting. Okay. I can't read music. She can. So she was kind of looking it over and was going like, we could do this. We could definitely do this. And so that kind of like started it, which was part of the research that we were doing about the opera, was to revitalize it. And not only do that, but all of the principal singers in the opera were all white people. when it was first done.
Right.
And so my sister, who is, is Navajo, and then my older brother, who is also classically trained, he sang it as well. So it was the first time ever, sung by Native people. So yeah, we were able to do it. And our first performance of it was in November, which is Native American History Month, November 2013. So it was exactly 100 years.
Wow.
From the first time that it was in Utah. And then we did it in Utah. We felt like we were on a show, a relic hunter, or like, Indiana Jones. We were finding amazing things because we just wanted to hear the music.
So one thing that I sort of got from watching the little PBS mini documentary, which of course we will link in our show notes, is, we saw little bits of the score of the sheet music, and it looked like there was the classical style music written out, the arias with, some kind of orchestral or piano accompaniment. And then there would be a bar with a fermata over it. And it would say like, and now there's like a Native American dance or something like that. So can you talk a little bit about how that works? I mean, did you incorporate those traditional Native American elements into your production as well?
So the whole purpose of having the Native people sing was because these songs, these stories were illegal at the time. You could literally be thrown in jail, imprisoned if you were caught. And ZITKALA-SA and her husband were the people in charge of making sure that people didn't do it. So I think it was like her way of kind of circumventing this policy that was unfair and unconstitutional, to give kind of like a moment where even in the story, even as the story is going on, it was like a perfect time to stop and then have the Native American music come through. So that was great for 1913 for the situation that we're in. But in 2013, after the passing of the 1978 Native American Rights Act, and then also the Repatriation Act, which allowed for sacred things that were stolen from Native people during colonization to be repatriated back. And then also us not being Ute or Lakota, we felt like it wasn't our place to showcase that, because if it was, we would have to do an actual Sundance. We would actually have to, perform that. And that's something that we do not have power or authority to do. Like, that's not our traditions. So what we instead wanted to do was focus on the story, focus on the actual love story. And then we also wanted to, since we were Native people doing this the first time, like, we wanted to show that we knew how to perform in a Western way for a Western audience, to say, oh, they're just amateurs, this is so cute. No, we wanted to show that we had the talent, we had the savvy. We wanted to show that we could be as good, because why wouldn't we, right? But I mean, there was a lot at stake, I feel like, for doing it that way. And so that's kind of like where we kind of drew the line on that.
I love that you took this opportunity also to showcase the talent that all of you had as well. And speaking to that, I want to know a little bit more about the other production side of putting together an opera. That's a huge endeavor in of itself. So I was just wondering, how are you able to do that? And like you said about, having Native Americans sing this as well, were there other elements in this production that also you tried to get that kind of representation into the production of the opera?
I think what was really interesting was going back, and it was around the same time that I was looking at different opera people, people like Puccini is who I really was like, he is super interesting, happening at the same time. But this idea of like colonialism, especially in Madame Butterfly, where you have this American person going to this foreign land to get with this exotic woman. And it was like, that's exactly what ZITKALA-SA was dealing with. That was the whole idea of like boarding schools. That was the whole idea of why she was so politically active, was because of this idea of like colonization against like Native women. And so that was kind of like the main factor of producing this opera. It was like, this is not just an opera. This is like a learning point where people need to understand what America has done and what Americans need to do going forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and also that it stops.
So, of course, we're talking a lot about this opera, and none of us really knows what it sounds like, in all of its glory. Can you tell us about, do you have a favorite moment in the opera that you could maybe tell us about, just to give us a little snapshot of what was it like?
Absolutely. So my sister has the most beautiful voice. One thing that she has and she's able to do, and I think this comes from our grandpa, the medicine man, is that when she sings, you feel it. You have emotions. You have this wave of everything's gonna be okay. You just, you get lost in it. So there's a song is in the opera. It's called "To a Star," and it's a woman. It's a super aria. It goes super high. She killed it. And just tears, like this song of love and honor, and my sister singing it, it's just so beautifully, and the moment and having, it all come together. It was so spectacular. The music itself, the woman that I was also on the PBS special with, her name is Jane Hafen, and she wrote beautifully what kind of it sounded like. And she says it sounded like a B Western movie. And that's kind of how it is. I mean, it's not great. You're not going to be like, oh, you know what song I need to hear? Is this song from this really obscure opera? It's not one of those operas. But we didn't want to seem like this was just music that no one would recognize just because it wasn't good music. It was very, very basic for the time.
But you're kind of capturing an age and an aesthetic and a whole ethic about it. Yeah,
exactly. And people at that time, like pop culture at the time, people loved natives. Like they thought already that we were gone, that we had disappeared. This is when you start seeing like a lot of federal policies start acting like there are no natives anywhere. So this is when like the national parks like arise, and wait, there's native people living on that land. Like how can you make that a national park? So then the second part that I absolutely love is this song that the warrior sings, and it's for tenor. My brother sang that song. The cool and interesting part about that was that when we were at BYU and we were in the archives and we were going through music, we found a letter that this Navajo man had written to William F. Hansen. And he wrote this letter, and he was like, I've sung this song on the radio. I've sung it in Chicago. I've been to New York. So he had written this letter, and he was a Navajo opera singer during like these early times. And we saw a picture of him, and he was like well known for dressing up in Navajo traditional regalia and singing these Western songs. And he had a beautiful voice. When he sang this song, the vow song from Sundance Opera in Chicago, he had a standing ovation. People were just like throwing things at him. They loved it. They wanted him to sing more and more and more. So he wrote this letter to William F. Hansen, and he was like, yeah, like, this is cool. I just wanted to let you know. So when we were in the archives at BYU, and our first question was, are there any native opera singers? Yes, there were, even back then. And there were Navajo ones just like us. His name is Haskell Naswood. We found music that was written for him. We found other articles that he had sang, and he had explored, America with his singing. And it's just amazing to see that, because I had no idea that Navajo people at that time, 1920s, 1930s, were singing Western opera songs about Native people written by a Native person. So it was really, really interesting just to hear my brother sing the song and go like, yep, he's a Navajo man, just like Haskell Naswood was. And they're singing this song. And it was just like total, again, we're doing this for her. This is what she wanted her music to accomplish, I think.
What do we do if we want to hear or perform or like engage with this opera now? I mean, we know that this work is out there. There's going to be a lot of people who like hear of it and like, I want to hear it. I want to do it. How do we engage?
I think the best thing that people can do is to learn the history first. I think a lot of times Native culture, Native history is kind of like used and propped up to make us feel better, or to make us feel like, oh, well, I'm American, but I'm not like them. I would never, colonize or take someone's language away from them. Or like William F. Anson, I would never just put my name on something that I didn't write. But that happens all the time still now to this day. So I always tell people, like, if you want to do this music, focus on the music rather than trying to recreate what ZITKALA-SA did in 1913. That's not going to fly, no matter where you are. Even if we did it today, we went to the reservation here in Utah and we did it exactly like, it would not fly. We would be canceled like crazy. And so the main part though is to like learn about her, learn about what was happening in music at that time. It was not cool, like what was going on. Yeah. So I mean, any way you do it, as long as you focus on the history and you try to connect that with what Native people are doing now, you're good.
Meg, this has been such an amazing conversation. We really want to know more. We're musicians. We're coming at this from the musician standpoint, and a lot of our listeners will too. And I think the question in all of our minds is like, wow, where can we listen to and see the score? So we'll wait with bated breath to see every inch of progress that you and your family make. And I bet not a few of our listeners and myself, quite frankly, are interested in helping with that as far as we're able to. And I guess the only other question that I have for you is, would you be willing to stick around and recommend something for our classical mixtape?
I will.
In our classical mixtape, we each recommend some music that's caught our ear this week to share with our listeners. So, Meg, what do you have for us this week?
I have a song by Janelle Monae. It's called I Like That. This song was used at the very beginning of the film Us. It kind of gave a eerie kind of feel to the movie, but the words are just bomb. I mean, she just talks about how I'm just a woman. I'm the awesomest person in the world. Like, take it for what it is. And it's just kind of like a theme song that I think anybody should listen to and just feel empowered. Like, you are beautiful, you're loved. In Navajo, for us, it's our relations. Like, we are all connected. Every single person is connected, and we are all family. And I feel like that would be like such a dedication to ZITKALA-SA. Like, you are just this song.
I don't care what I look like, but I feel good. Better than amazing and better than I could. Told the whole world I'm the pen and the antidote. Take a different type of girl to keep the whole world afloat. Cause I'm crazy and I'm sexy and I'm cool. Little rough around the edges, but I keep it smooth.
Thank you so much, Meg, and for joining us today on our podcast. Tiffany, what do you have for us?
I'm going to piggyback on our segment about the Philadelphia Chamber Music Society and bring you an excerpt from a performance. So this is the Kegelstatt Trio by Mozart. This is Anthony McGill on the clarinet, Melina Pájaro van de Stad on the viola, and Gloria Chen on the piano. I can't tell you guys how excited I am going to be to read chamber music for the first time after the pandemic is over. I mean, hard to think of a thing that I miss more than just like simple musical connection, the kind that we always take for granted when we start a rehearsal. Sort of like, okay, yeah, we can play the note at the same time. Boy, do I appreciate that now. Yeah, this is a great performance. Check it out.
William?
All right, I'm going to recommend some Hurdy Gurdy music. My first big encounter with the Hurdy Gurdy was an album that I was obsessed with. This is a performance of the Dutch composer Tieleman Susato's Danserye of 1551. There are many recordings of this piece, and because it's such early music, really Renaissance era, it's widely interpreted. You can do lots of different things with the instruments that you use and the styles that you do. There's just so much research and creativity that goes into this old music performance. I'm just going to put it out there and say, accept no substitutes. You've got to listen to the New London Consort directed by Philip Pickett. And I'll say that from the liner notes, I can tell you that the hurdy-gurdist here is Nigel Eaton. And there's all sorts of instruments on here that I actually have no idea what they are. Like, do you guys know what a knockers is, or a rommelpot, or a tenor quartal? Because I sure don't. And maybe some of that was what we just heard. I don't know, but it's super cool. So that's my recommendation this week.
Great. Well, that's fun. Thanks, Will. I am recommending an excerpt from a piece that I actually got to conduct a number of years ago by Susan Botti called EchoTempo. This piece was commissioned by the New York Phil, and it was premiered back in 2001, actually. I think what Susan told me was that it was premiered very close after 9/11. This piece is a setting of Native American texts. There are 4 movements, and each of them is based on a certain text or a song by a certain Native American tribe. And so it is actually it's a percussion concerto with a soprano, with orchestral accompaniment. Very cool piece. Had a really good time learning it and performing it with Susan. And so here is an excerpt. This is the first movement called Spring is Opening, a celebration of the cacophony and renewal of spring, which I find quite appropriate for this time. You'll find the links to all these and to our full classical mixtape playlist in the show notes.
And with that, it's time to wrap up this episode of the Classical Gabfest. I'm William White, and on behalf of Tiffany Liu and Kensho Watanabe, I'd like to thank you so much for listening and to encourage you to subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts. We'd also love your help spreading the word about the show on social media, where you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can reach us at classicalgabfest@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you. Until next time, happy listening, and we'll be back with you next week.